All right, everyone. Welcome in UGA Football Live with JC Shelton here, Georgia-Ole Miss. We're going to give a preview or finish up our preview. We're going to make a prediction as well. This has been a fun game to study. I'll say that. Huge game for both teams. You know, you look at the Ole Miss side and Lane Kiffin and the Rebs. This is for their chance at the college football playoff. Obviously, they need to win out after as well. But with two losses on the slate already, they lose this one, they're out of the college football playoff, most likely. Never say never. Georgia, on the other hand, has an incredibly tough slate over the next 2 weeks, right? On the road at Ole Miss. Then you welcome number 7 Tennessee to Athens for the SEC championship. If Georgia wins this game against Ole Miss, you have one game to win the SEC championship. Obviously, you close out UMass and Tech. So this is the pivotal stretch for Georgia's season in that aspect. You know, both teams want obviously a win there, but Georgia, you know, you get an SEC championship, you win that, you get a bye. I mean, that's what they're going for, right? Obviously, you know, Kirby Smart and that Bulldogs team, they take it week by week, but we don't have to. All right, we're looking ahead. And these two matchups the next couple of weeks are absolutely pivotal for Georgia to get the best path to the college football playoff. And you really want that SEC championship win under your belt, get you a bye, rest up, and prepare for the playoff. Let's jump right into it. Let's hit some injury updates. Branson Robinson, he's out. Nothing new on him. Got the MCL. Roderick Robinson, he's still out with the toe. I'm surprised he has missed so much. I know that was surgically repaired in camp, but he has yet to play a snap, and there's nothing really new on him. Anthony Evans, unfortunately, he's going to be out. He's missing his second straight game with a hamstring. You know, when we talked about it when that first came out last week before the Florida game that he had injured that, y'all heard me talk about it. I was like, man, hamstring injuries can be weird, especially for skill position players, for guys that really utilize their speed above all, and that is Anthony Evans. You know, he's been a good step up at punt returner and kick returner this year, and also has gotten some snaps there at receiver. And on that note, Colby Young, you know, the charges against him are in the process of being dropped. So something to keep an eye out. I don't know when Georgia would bring him back. He's suspended indefinitely pending that case. But it looks like that case is on the way to be resolved. So wondering when he'll get back. Nothing exactly new on his status, though. A couple of good things. Smile Mondon Jr., right? All SEC linebacker, led Georgia in tackles 2 years ago, second last year. He's missed a lot of time with the foot injury that's really been nagging him for the last year plus. He's questionable for this one on the latest injury report. There'll be another one this evening, I believe, and then tomorrow on game day as well. Something to look for. Georgia hasn't necessarily missed him, but, you know, guys, we just talked about how pivotal these SEC matchups are. So having that rotation at linebacker to keep guys fresh is really what Georgia loves to do. It's why Georgia, I think, is so good on defense on a yearly basis, because not only do they have a lot of talent and they have really good defensive minds there, but they also be able to rotate that talent and stay fresh throughout the game. So when teams get into that late third quarter, fourth quarter mode, if it's a tight game, you know, they want to run the ball and really impose physicality. Well, having fresh legs is huge for that. So we might see him. He's questionable for this one. Additionally, and we talked about Micah Morris a little bit and didn't hear anything on this. You know, he went down in that Georgia-Florida game. And he came back in, and, you know, he was rotating with Tate Ratledge, that was his first game back from an injury. And he didn't look like he was moving well. So it's something that stood out to me. And sure enough, he shows up on the availability report just last evening. So he's questionable for this one. Not sure what the injury is. I might have missed it if Kirby Smart had talked about it, but I don't believe he has. Something to look out for. So if obviously he's not 100%, and neither is Tate Ratledge, something to look out for. You two rotational pieces with Tate. You know, they don't want to play him every snap because of those injuries. Micah might be the kind of the same way, so I'm not sure what we're going to see. You might see both of them, right? And they might be fine, but you never know. It's something to note. Ole Miss, we'll talk about these. These are pretty interesting. Leading rusher, Henry Parrish, he's going to be out for this game. That's obviously a blow. Leading receiver, Trey Harris, who missed last week's game at Arkansas, really didn't matter, 63-31. But 6 touchdowns for Jackson Dart. He's going to be doubtful for this one. Keep an eye on that. Jordan Watkins, who really stepped up when Trey Harris was out, 254 receiving yards last week. He had 3 touchdowns too. questionable for this game. So, that offense, and, it's number 4 offense in the country. They're missing some pieces here, and they could be missing all 3 of these guys. We'll see. Something to note. All right, so let's get into the rest of our preview here, and we'll get on to a prediction as well. Like I said, it's been really fun to study this one. It's a huge game, and it's going to be a chess match. I always think about, when Georgia is, they're playing Texas, and it reminds me so much of that game with Steve Sarkisian and that offense, that attack. They like to do so many different things. They're really creative play callers, and they have guys that can make plays, everywhere. Good quality quarterback play, of course, but then receivers who can create separation, offensive lines that can get some work done in the trenches, and running backs that really are complementary, I would say. And it's going to be a chess match between Lane Kiffin and that mentality, and Jackson Dart and his ability to spread the ball around, use his feet. He's the ultimate competitor. I love watching that kid play. I'm not going to lie. And then that defense for Georgia and Kirby Smart, Will Muschamp, Travaris Robinson, those minds in that defensive room, what kind of plan are they going to come out with? I think it's going to be similar to Texas. I think Jalen Walker is going to be really key in this game, moving him all around the field, using him as a spy for Dart at times, especially on third down. I put money on that. We're going to see that. Secondary, Georgia's secondary is going to be put under pressure. This is the best passing offense they've faced all season. Texas was more balanced. Ole Miss, they like to keep it in the air, baby. So it's going to be really interesting from that standpoint, kind of the chess match we see throughout the game. So Ole Miss, number 4 offense, like I said. Georgia's sitting there at number 14. Number 32 UGA offense now. This is scoring versus the number 6 defense for the Rebels. 2.3 yards per carry allowed on the ground. It's first in the country. And we'll get to why that is here in a second. Running game for Ole Miss. Nothing too crazy here. And missing Parrish is actually going to be another hit to this. We'll see what happens with this rushing attack, and if they keep it in the air more and utilize screens and such that Georgia loves to kind of an extension of the run game. 4.7 yards per carry. That's number 53 in the country. Ole Miss passing, like I said, they're crazy, man. 377 yards per game. That's by far the most in the country. Georgia, though, allowing 187 yards per game passing. All right, so this is the best pass defense Ole Miss has faced this season. Another thing to note, and I don't think this is going to hurt them at home as much, Ole Miss, 3rd most penalized team in the country. Georgia was 6, I think, per game. Ole Miss was 8. So this Ole Miss team, too, you think about them, that incredible loss to Kentucky, which is something to note, and we'll get to. And then LSU. They've had chances in both of those games, obviously led the entire game against LSU, lost in overtime. I think Lane Kiffin has done a great job of getting these guys back on track. You can tell they're still playing for something. You can tell they don't think their season's over. They have an opportunity this week to make the college football playoff, really. And you went out and you're in with a win over number 3 Georgia. Really just racked up on Arkansas and took advantage of that Arkansas defense really, really well. 694 yards of offense. They had 8 sacks on defense, 13 tackles for loss. Dart absolutely went off, 562, 6 touchdowns. This is going to be a different animal. They had their fun last week. Now it's time to play smash mouth football against a really, really talented defense who's playing better over the last few weeks. The improvement for Ole Miss is on defense, and we talked about this on Monday, but I want to go into it just a little bit more here. It's the thing when I'm studying this game that I'm most surprised about, because I've been watching Ole Miss through the season, don't keep track of other teams' numbers until the week of. And that's where I saw this. And it's, they're up from the 42nd total defense last year to 6 in 2024. That's 13.2 points per game, 306 yards per game. Second in rush defense. Like I said, they're first in yards per carry. The transfer portal has been really good for them. And Kiffin and company did a great job of just kind of like roster management, I would say. And then, you see around the country teams and programs and really smart head coaches are putting in general managers to help with these things and keep an eye on the transfer portal and identify those needs and which guy could step in and help. And they've done a great job this way. And I think you could tell that Ole Miss team, obviously they were like, okay, we have Jackson Dart returning. We have these guys, these weapons on the outside. We have an offensive line that needs a little help, and then we need defense. And that's what they did. 3 of their offensive linemen are transfers. They've done a good job stepping in. On defense, their top players mostly or transfers. You look at a familiar face and Florida transfer edge Princely Umanian, 7.5 sacks on the season, his best output in a season, I believe, in his career already. Walter Nolan, the A&M transfer, Georgia pushed hard for him. Ole Miss got him 29 stops, 3 sacks. Trey Amos from Bama, cornerback, leads in pass breakups, 3 interceptions on the season. That pass defense hasn't been great for Ole Miss, but he's a guy who can make plays. And then you look at linebacker, you got Perkins there, 27 stops, 9 sacks, a pick for him. Offense, as far as receiving goes, it's really, Trey Harris and Jordan Watkins. Those guys not being healthy, I think, is something to watch offensively. Now, you talk about the defensive numbers and who they played, and that's a really big thing, right? And we're at that point of the season now that we can point to the type of defenses you're playing, the talent on those, and then how you perform against them. Are your numbers inflated a little bit? They are. I think they are a little bit inflated here because opponents, Furman, Middle Tennessee, Wake Forest, Georgia Southern, just totally stat padded almost. I'm not going to say they did it on purpose, but those are stat pad games. Then you face Kentucky. You put up 17 points at home against Kentucky. And the reason this stands out to me is Kentucky plays a similar strategy on defense like Georgia. They put a lot of stock and work into their defense. They have for years. Georgia had a very tough day against Kentucky on the road against that defense. It's the best defense they've played. Ole Miss put up 17 points, 353 yards of offense, 261 through the air. So way below their season averages. 3.2 yards per carry on the ground, which was a very, very big thing for this next stat, I'll tell you, against the Wildcats, which was 1 for 10 on third. So you're living in third and long, right? 3rd and 7, 8, 9, 10 plus. And that's just, it's so hard to move the ball like that. And they weren't able to for most of the day. So, and here's another example, Oklahoma. They also played Oklahoma. And they won, but they put up 26 points. And Oklahoma, defensive talent. That's why Oklahoma was ranked coming into the season, folks. I know they've had a horrendous season on offense. Fired their OC, changing quarterbacks all the time. 26 points at home against Oklahoma in that defense. Lane Kiffin teams, they demand recognition on offense, and rightly so. But the Rebs have looked unstoppable at times. Okay, but this is the most talented Ole Miss defense I think I've seen, and that's why this game is going to be a little different. I know Georgia, and we can focus on the 52-17 win at home in Athens last year. I don't care about that really. I think it's going to be a different game. And you can mention several things. Georgia's not as effective on offense. There's obviously a lot of pressures on Carson Beck, and it hasn't resulted in good things at times. The times it's been great. And you look at that in that Ole Miss defense, to me, a different game, right? But I think what you can point to is Kirby and company have had their number against that Ole Miss offense. So I think for me, it's like, what do the Bulldogs do on offense? They can move the ball, be good in the red zone. Red zone numbers are fine this year. If they can do that and offensively protect the football at times, right? I think that's going to be where Georgia is really happy. If they can protect the football, because I think there is yards to be gained against this Ole Miss pass defense, but the running game could be a tough sledding day. This was another stat that we mentioned Monday, but I want to point it out again because it's pretty incredible. Number of defenders with at least 20 quarterback pressures and 3 sacks for both teams. Georgia, 0. Ole Miss, 6. They get after quarterback, and a lot of them can, and they love to send blitzes as well. So Carson Beck's going to be challenged. Pre-snap, he's going to be challenged, and when they disguise, he's going to have to identify these free rushers and attack that area. And I think Mike Bobo, I think, did a really good job in that second half against Florida of allowing Carson Beck to be creative with some play calls, tunnel screens, bubbles, extensions of the run game, right? That's what they talk about. But also running the football on early downs as well, because 5 of Beck's 11 interceptions have come on first down. Can Georgia be effective there running it early downs? The spread right now is Georgia 2.5. It opened there. It stayed there. 54 is the total. ESPN Analytics gives Ole Miss 53.9% chance. I think statistically that analytics are very in favor of Ole Miss, but like I said, the opponents they've faced and such, it's not too much to call home about to me. I don't expect Georgia to look much improved on offense as a result of playing this defense on the road and you know Carson Beck not playing his best ball. I don't think this is the week that we see something crazy improvement because of the product we've seen on the field for the last 8 games. That Rebels run defense, we talked about it, 2.3 yards per carry. The pass defense has holes though, 91st in the country in that metric. And I've been debating this all week, really. Like, will Georgia commit to the ground game with Beck's struggles? I've taken the pulse of the Georgia fan base. That's what they want to see. They obviously want to see less interceptions, but they want to see more commitment to the ground game. When ETN went out, it was all on Carson Beck's shoulders there for a bit. Then they got Nate Frazier going, and he helped. ETN's going to be back for this game. He's not on the availability report. Nate Frazier's healthy. That was the question. Will they utilize that? And the more I study it, I'm convinced UGA is going to stick to its plan really all season, which, put it on Carson and live with the results, whether good or bad. Sometimes those are great, sometimes not as much. Rebels, they are effective as a turnover defense, 1.7 margin per game defensively. They'll be ready when Beck makes a mistake. And I can see Carson throwing a pick. Absolutely. I wouldn't blame you for putting money on that. But Georgia has been able to recover just because that defense has been so good in bad positions. And I think without those positions this defense has been in, take away the first half against Bama, this would be a defense at the very top of this statistical list right now in total defense and those numbers. So the question once again boils down to me completely is the Georgia defense. Can they keep Jackson Dart uncomfortable? They did last year. He may not have his favorite weapons this week, right? And I'm taking Mykel Williams, Warren Brinson, Jalen Walker, Malachi Starks. They have my confidence, and they have been outstanding at complementary football with a shaky offense at times. So I'm taking Georgia right now, 2.5. I see it as a 7-point game, maybe a 10-point game, right? And Lane Kiffin's 5-10 against ranked teams, 3-7 in the last 10. Nobody can beat Georgia except Alabama, it feels like. So in a game like this, where it's a quality opponent with a lot on the line, I think you're crazy for not taking Georgia. So that's what we're doing. That's what we're riding with, folks. And let's get some college football pick 'em in here. I had a horrendous week last week, and it could have been because I lost my wedding ring. I had it for 4 months, and I thought I would lose it quicker, but she got me another one. We're set, folks. So I think I got my mojo back here. Let's go Miami at Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech, 11-point dog at home. Miami has come so close to losing this season. You can look at their schedule and see like 3 to 4 losses that could have happened depending on a couple of plays. Georgia Tech last year got the benefit of some really horrendous coaching by Mario Cristobal for that game, right? Georgia Tech ended up winning. Miami should have won. Bad coaching. Georgia Tech in their season has been underwhelming because we expected more from this team under Brett Key because what they did last year and playing Georgia close and such. They've had some good wins that haven't turned out to be great wins. In Florida State, that win looks like nothing now. But I think this is that opportunity for Georgia Tech at home and Brent Key and welcoming the best team in the ACC, undefeated, right? I think they keep it close. Miami to win, Georgia Tech to cover. Florida at Texas. Interesting game here. At Texas, so it's home. I get it. 21.5-point favorite. I think this number revolves around the health of DJ Lagway, which I get. Now, I've heard that he's questionable and not completely out, which is interesting to me. How limited is he? Florida defense played really good ball for the most part of that Georgia game. And Texas hasn't looked like the powerhouse we saw, of course, in that run to start the season before Georgia. Give me Florida. Can't believe I'm saying that. Usually doesn't turn out well, but we're going with it because it's a gut feeling, folks. Florida at Texas. Give me Florida plus 21.5. Colorado minus 4.5 at Texas Tech. This is a huge game in Big 12. you haven't followed along with the Big 12, very competitive conference. And Colorado is right there in the Big 12 champ hunt. They have to win out. They need a little help, I think, from Iowa State. 4.5 here at Texas Tech. I'm rolling with Colorado. I think they got some good stuff going. The defense is playing better. The offense, you know what you're going to get there. Mississippi State plus 24.5 at Tennessee. I took UK last week against Tennessee. They almost stinking won the game. Tennessee has a knack for sleepwalking at this point in the season because they're all looking for that Georgia game. I don't think they're disciplined enough to show up in full force against this Mississippi State team who can provide problems. And Van Buren, and that Tennessee defense has been really good. Now, have they played really, really great offenses? No. But, and the one they did, Arkansas, they ended up losing that game. I think Jeff Lebby and Van Buren and that team is going to show up with a vengeance. They want to take them down. Tennessee in danger of sleepwalking here. I like Mississippi State to cover 24.5. It's a lot. I know Mississippi State isn't great, but we're taking them. Alabama at LSU, right? This is the night game on ABC. It should have been Georgia-Ole Miss, whatever. I get it. It's that night against LSU, and they always get the good kicks, apparently. Alabama, LSU plus 2.5. Interesting game. LSU does not lose night games often. If they have, it's usually Alabama. Alabama's defense is playing better. I'm just not sure if they can stack up to this passing attack for LSU. It's going to test them a lot. Reminds me of what Carson Beck and that Georgia offense did. Think about that second half. A steady passer. They asked him to do a lot, so it's kind of do or die by Garrett Nussmeier. But he's at home with that environment. I'm just going to take LSU here. Gut feeling it's a 2.5 point spread. So it would be Alabama. If it was Alabama, it'd probably be 5-6, right? But it's at LSU. I think they cover. They might win, which would be incredible for the SEC race. And that's what we'll end it with. We'll end this show with the SEC race. Georgia and A&M both at 5-1, right? Tennessee 4-1, LSU and Texas 3-1. There's a bunch of different pathways for these guys, the SEC championship. So you can sit here and talk for an hour about this, but we're going to sum it up here. Really, the key game, and if Aggies can win out here, is to face Texas at the end of the season. LSU needs help. Obviously, they need Bama to lose this weekend in Death Valley. They play Oklahoma as well. Tennessee has Mississippi State this week, which we talked about. UGA the next, and then they got Vandy, which is no tough out. Texas, right? Talked about them. They have Florida. Then they go Arkansas, Kentucky, A&M. So Texas is about to find out about this point in the season in the SEC. You may be looking forward to a game, but you can't think about it much because they're going to catch you any given Saturday, baby. That's what we've seen this year out of this conference with the no division format, with the top two teams in division standings facing in Atlanta for the first time in history. Parity. Just parity. And then the transfer portal has kind of evened out the talent around the country. And you see it in the SEC with people like Vanderbilt. South Carolina, off a bad season, has upped the talent at certain places that they knew they were lacking it, especially on defense, obviously, and they're playing really well there. So Texas is about to find out what it takes to get through this. If they do, I'll be really impressed. I think that's a tough slate. I know you can say what you want about Florida, Arkansas, Kentucky. They have their moments, but they also have moments where they play really, really good football. So something to watch out for. Georgia, their path, obviously, went out. Just thinking went out. Don't give the playoff committee, don't put it on them to put Georgia in or out, because we saw what happened last year, right? It's all about expectations, I guess, because Georgia came into that season riding off the 2 straight national titles and then became the first team in CFB history to bounce out of the top 4 as the number 1 team in the last week of the season with a 3-point loss to the SEC championship. So you don't want to give them that ability to do that, really. Just make yourself undeniable. And Georgia can do that with wins of the next 2 weeks. They should be number 1 in the country after that anyway. I don't think the numbers really matter per se until you get to the SEC championship, and then that's where that matters, right? Because if you win that, you're probably going to be number 1 either way. But so Georgia controls their destiny here, man. It's all on these 2 weeks here, and I'm not trying to take anything away from the Georgia Tech game. I hope to be there. I don't think taking away from UMass. Valuable game to get some guys some snaps, but this is it for the SEC race, and I'll be interested on what this Georgia team, what do they show up like? Is Kirby Smart able to get these guys fired up like he did against Texas, or do they come out flat like against Bama? Right, so that's a big question too, and there's so many things that go into that, but we'll see. And I'm confident. I took Georgia, folks. I think it's a 7 to 10 point game somewhere in there, but we'll absolutely see what happens and who's healthy. We talked about the injuries earlier. Something to look out for pregame. Check your Twitter, check your wherever you get your college football news or ESPN when they hit the broadcast. 3:30 kick at Ole Miss in Oxford is going to be a great one. We'll see you after the game for instant reaction. So whether you're on Facebook, X, Pulse Sports Network on YouTube, we appreciate you listening. You can check us out right after the game. Been averaging maybe like 25 minutes after the game, just getting some notes down for you guys and getting set up. And we're going for instant reactions right after the game. We'll talk all about it and we'll process it together. So until then, have a great weekend. I hope the dogs pull one out here for you.